All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan. I am the Director of Events for NU Impact. First of all, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. The events team and I are super excited for our panel tonight. We have Ryan Dings, Edison Almeida, and Carrie Bowie with us. Also, a special thank you to Izzy Spiegel for being our moderator. And then before we get started, just a few shout outs for our events coming up. We have a collab with Vital coming up next week on the 25th, which will be a health tech and fintech event. And then we will also be having our conference, and I'll let Spencer speak a little on that.
For sure. Thanks, Jordan. And thanks to all the panelists for coming out. Should be a really exciting event. So on April 3rd, we have our Sustainable Investing Summit. The Hopin page actually just went live today, so we can probably pop the link to the registration in the chat. Sure. If you scan that, the link will take you to the registration page. But we have some really exciting panels planned for that, also including a discussion on sustainable energy and infrastructure as well. Should be a really awesome event. And stay tuned on our Instagram for some more details on speakers as well. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so we will be having Izzy Spiegel moderating tonight. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, my name is Izzy Spiegel. I'm one of the co-presidents at NU Impact this year. Fourth year studying entrepreneurship and finance with a minor in global social entrepreneurship. And I'm currently on my third co-op at Mass CEC on their venture investments team. So kind of been introduced to the clean energy, clean tech space the past few months and excited to learn more from our speakers here tonight. Am I good to get started, Jordan?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and we'll start off with some introductions with our panelists and then move into a discussion. And then near the end, we'll open it up to Q&A. So definitely, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to throw them in the chat and we can get to them at Q&A, or we'll give you time to unmute and ask them yourselves. So maybe if Ryan, we want to start with you, just giving a brief introduction to yourself, a little bit about your background and what got you interested in the clean tech space, and then a bit on what you're doing now.
I would be glad to. And good evening, folks. Really great to be with you guys. Love Northeastern University, not only for all the amazing entrepreneurship and focus on impact investment, for the amazing co-ops that we have from Northeastern at Greentown Labs. So great to be with you. And when I found out I was with Edison and Carrie, who are both good friends, I just wanted to sit back and listen to them talk, because they are amazing people. Good friends at Greentown Labs, and excited to be with them. The quick and dirty on me, I started my career as a real estate attorney. Love real estate, love the built environment, went into private practice, and ever since going into private practice a long time ago, have been trying to get out of private practice ever since and stay away from it. I love the law. I just didn't really love private practice, but I loved real estate. And the more I practiced, the more I fell in love with building technology and clean technology, and constantly saw the work that my clients were doing in real estate development, and thought, boy, there's got to be a better way to build, a smarter way to build, a more sustainable way to build. There's got to be a different way to think about energy, to think about how we're consuming all these materials. And about 10, 11 years ago, I took a leap from being a commercial real estate attorney to working for a startup company in the building tech space called Blue Homes. That was a rapid ride over 5 years. We raised a couple $100 million. We built a company that was close to going public, and it didn't. We didn't quite make it, but it was an exceptional journey, to say the least. And from there, I started a company with a colleague of mine called Sunwealth a number of years ago. And we focused on clean tech, specifically on solar, where we were really excited to build a fund and help finance commercial solar projects. We incubated that company about 5 years ago out of this little place called Greentown Labs. And in fact, over the course of the fund that we built, we actually built the solar project that's on the roof of Greentown Labs right now, along with a bunch of other solar projects around the greater Boston area and New England. That company's doing great, and I'm so happy to be an investor and a kind of founder in the fund of that company, but had a real great opportunity to come over to Greentown about 1.5 years ago, join our CEO, Emily Reichert, and help continue to build Greentown Labs. For all the commercialized technology that's out there that we need to keep thinking about deploying, there's so much more innovation we need to do to get to carbon neutrality and to create the future that we all want. Delighted to be doing that at Greentown Labs, and truly delighted to be doing it with two great partners. Edison is a great friend and colleague, and Schneider is an awesome partner of Greentown. And Carrie is a force in the space, and really helping us think about how we create the future that works for everybody. So delighted to be with you guys and with them both, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ryan. We can move to Edison next.
Thank you, Izzy. And Ryan, that was an awesome introduction there. It's really a pleasure to be here with both of you. And perhaps just giving a little background here. I think I've known Carrie for, 6-7 years or so. Ryan, at least like 3 or 5, something like that. So I guess overall, it's fascinating just to see how here in this region, in Massachusetts especially, we created this ecosystem that has been really pushing the envelope and accelerating the whole transformation of the industry into clean energy. But just taking a step back in terms of my background, so I've been now with Schneider Electric for about 1.5 years. I'm part of Schneider Electric Ventures, and Schneider Electric Ventures is a €500 million fund with a single LP, which is Schneider Electric. And what we're trying to do is, in essence, to identify disruptive opportunities that can become, in essence, a net new $1 billion line of business for Schneider 10 years from now, by 2030. So the way we go about it is we cover the whole life cycle of a startup, from the more traditional corporate VC type of investment that have peers with awesome financial background looking into company series C, D, F, G, H, so on and so forth, and making those types of investments, to a team of folks looking into how to strike commercial relationships between the startups that we identify and the core of Schneider, as we call it, the lines of businesses. And also we have the business incubation team, which is the one that I'm part of, that's looking into real disruptive innovations that could be as early as, hey, we got an idea and we got a plan, and we are ready to go build the business and capture that. And we can work with the entrepreneurs to, in essence, add value to whatever they are doing by flexing the muscle of Schneider and bring resources, networks, subject matter expertise, and accelerate the whole journey of that company so they can become $100 million plus in revenues in 3 to 5 years. And if that happens, we, with that type of growth, we can get the attention of Schneider lines of business and M&A group, where we can look into an acquisition. And with the acquisition, of course, we would be looking into how do we take that $100 million plus company to become a net new $1 billion line of business for Schneider in another 2 to 3 years. So that's about Schneider. But prior to Schneider, I'm actually I'm engineer, turning into consultant, turning into salesperson, turning into entrepreneur. We started a couple of businesses. The last one of them ended up running it as founder and CEO for about 7 years. We were offering software services to commercial customers, helping them reduce their cost of energy by managing their peak demand. And went through the whole journey of entrepreneuring in a startup, from starting from an idea to building a team, finding first customers, developing a new technology, getting patents on it, and raising money from the 3 Fs, right? Family, friends, and fools. And then from that going into institutional money, VC, corporate VC. And by the time that I've grown the business and booked 4 years worth of deals for the company, a couple of private equity folks bought control of the business and they've been running it for the last 3 years. So that's when I kind of took a break for about 1.5 years. And when I was ready to do something else, Schneider reached out to me actually on LinkedIn. Reached out saying, hey, we are looking for someone to help us build new ventures based out of Boston. Do you know anybody that would be interested? And yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here. I think the key driver to be in this space is, as I started my career in engineering, I was actually in telecommunications. And back in those days, we were basically building out the very first digital systems in telecommunications. So it's amazing to see how much the industry has evolved. Back in those days, my main driver for that was I wanted to build a world where everybody could be connected and could talk with each other independent of the distances. And I think it's amazing to see what's happened over these last 20 years on that front. And as I basically transitioned from that industry into clean energy, was mostly driven by the fact that I start to see the number of devices getting connected to the systems that we built. The internet was increasing exponentially. And Schneider, we call it everything is going digital. And as things start to go digital, of course, they use electric power. And this electric power needs to come from renewable sources in order to be sustainable. So that's very much, I think this is the biggest challenge that we face as a society nowadays. And it's another huge infrastructure build out that is going to enable us to thrive over the next century. So really glad to be here, glad to be talking to all of you.
Thanks, Edison, and then we'll finish up with Carrie.
Great. So I am happy to be here. As I put into the chat, Ron and Edison are both forces themselves. In terms of how I got into the space, my background is in environmental engineering. So I came into energy from the environmental side. So went to MIT undergrad and for business school. In between, I worked in semiconductor manufacturing. I actually went to University of Michigan for a master's in environmental engineering. And so I've always done more of the environmental work. And since we're starting March Madness, I have to say go blue, since they're one of the top seeds. I got to do that piece. So I had to throw that in there. But I came back up here and as I was looking at the environmental piece and thinking about brownfields and that work, when I came back to MIT, Susan Hockfield was then president. She had just come on as president. And so she was our first woman or female president, but she was also our first non-engineering president. So she was coming from the life sciences space, and her two big pushes were around life sciences and around energy, and not just renewable or clean energy, just energy period. So how could MIT students play as in sort of the fossil fuel as well as the renewable space? So, horizontal drilling, or like what are all the things that we can bring to bear on sort of the energy issues that were facing us. So it was a really exciting time in business school. We started I was one of the co-chairs of the Sloan Energy and Environment Club. So my second year as an MBA, we started the MIT Energy Conference. So I think it's just passed, and I guess this was maybe years 15 or 16. So I was there for probably the first 10 I went to. Like the last 5 years, I probably haven't caught all of them. I've been pretty busy, but it's really exciting to see that work. Dave Danielson, who was the president of the MIT Energy Club went to General Catalyst and, to the Department of Energy and ARPA-E. He is now at Breakthrough Energy Ventures. So I got to see a lot of those things starting then. And then when I graduated, I took a non-traditional route and I went to go work in state government. And so I worked for Governor Deval Patrick, first Black governor in Massachusetts, second Black governor in the country. And I went as the special assistant to the Undersecretary for Environment. And the cool thing was there was no special assistant to the Undersecretary for Energy. So I got to work with her at the time. It was Ann Berwick, but I also got to work with Phil Giudice, who just actually took a position in the Biden-Harris administration. I got to work with Mark Sylvia, who's now at Blue Wave Solar. And so I got like all those people in the space. I got to hang out with Alicia Barden was my office mate. She was I think assistant general counsel at the time. And she went on to be at the Department of Environmental Protection, where I went, as well as Mass CEC, NYSERDA. I think she's back now at First Light Power. So I've gotten to see this whole energy space take form, and especially in the administration, what Governor Patrick did was really swung for the fences, and we, put 5 really sweeping pieces of legislation in place during that time. So it was the Global Warming Solutions Act, the Green Communities Act, the Oceans Management Act, the Biofuels Bill, and one more, the Green Jobs Act. And so all of that was really exciting. So I was there before there was a Mass CEC. There was not a Mass CEC at the time. There was not even a Department of Energy Resources. It was a division of Energy Resources. So got to see all of that happen. Went down to the Department of Environmental Protection after maybe a year or two there. And I spent about 8 or 9 years at Mass DEP. There I worked on Obama's economic stimulus package. I did brownfields, so cleaning up contaminated properties, putting them back into productive use. But there was still an energy component there of putting solar on brownfields and landfills. I was a director of environmental justice, which meant, regardless of what race or ethnicity, what language you spoke, how much money you made, you should have a right to clean air, clean water, open spaces. And there were a lot of energy justice pieces there. And then the last piece was around food policy. So I sat on the Massachusetts Food Policy Council. So that's really my background is in that space. I left and I started 2 nonprofits. One, and I'll gloss over it. The Majura Project is a startup accelerator focused on founders of color. And out of that, I ended up starting the brown and the green space. And I'll give you 2, an example here, and this will connect me also to Ryan and to Edison. And so in the Majura Project, what we do is around consulting and coaching and connections and capital. And so I started to realize that, doing the consulting, coaching, connections is great, but these entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color, need access to capital. And so I started to meet angels and VCs and people in that space and having those conversations. So Julianne Zimmerman is one of my friends. She's part of BGS as well. She runs Reinventure Capital along with Ed Duggar. I actually met Edison, I think, at a holiday party that Julianne put on while he was running his startup at the time. And then another VC from California, well, not from California, he's in California, but he's originally from Somerville. I actually got to know him, and the way Brown and the Green Space started was in trying to get funding for a company that was in Greentown Labs, a company called Spark Charge. Josh Aviv is the founder. He was actually on Shark Tank last October, got money from Mark Cuban and Lori Grenier. But we got him a little bit of money, I think actually from at least one of Ryan's founders at Sunwealth. So Omar Bladen is a part of our group. And so I've known Omar for a long time and the folk over at Sunwealth. And so there's that connection to Sunwealth and Greentown Labs as well. So I can go on and on, but let me stop there because I know we don't have that much time.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. And thanks everyone for those introductions. It's kind of cool to see how your collaborations have worked. And I think that's something I've noticed about Massachusetts in this space specifically, is how important collaboration is. So I guess I think we can maybe touch on that a little bit later, but to dive a little bit deeper into what you're each doing in your own respective organizations. Carrie, maybe we can start with you. If you want to talk a little bit more about your work with Browning the Green Space, and just what does it look like on a day-to-day for you and in your organization to increase the participation of underrepresented groups in clean energy?
Yeah, and I guess day to day is relatively new. So we just got founded in September. So I think we're still in the process of doing a bit of building in a sense, but day to day has me in a number of different places because the way we're set up is across 5 different focus areas. And I'll just give them the 5 C's that are careers. And so careers is really doing a pathway to employment for, really we're targeting people of color. And so if I think of who that person is that, 8th grader, at the Timothy Middle School in Roxbury. How do they get into, how do they end up working for a startup at Greentown Labs, or having a job at Snyder Electric, or working for a Nexamp or somebody doing solar installation. So green jobs are both blue collar and white collar jobs, and so our target is on young folk. And so how do we think about the Madison Park vocational technical high schools, and the Boston Green Academies, and the Roxbury Community Colleges and Benjamin Franklin Institutes of Technology, because not everybody needs to go to Northeastern or to MIT to have those jobs. So what does that look like? And so we have meetings with a number of different people. We are looking at internships and apprenticeships. So I might be talking to Mass CEC about their internship program one day. In terms of the next one is around companies. And so how do we think about big companies and removing unconscious bias, and how are they targeting the right places to go and look? So I might be talking to people at the Northeast Clean Energy Council, about toolkits for giving people paths to think about how they do that. Our 3rd C is capital. And so capital is around, how do we get more funding to people like Josh Aviv? How do we get more Joshes at Greentown Labs? I have meetings with some of the people over at Greentown. Ryan's colleague Maya is very involved with thinking about some of that work and how they get more startups led by founders of color there, and not just led, but as they are starting to grow and hire, how are they making sure that they diversify their staff as they think about that? The 4th C is contracts, and that really is more around, hold on, phone ringing. That's more around not startups, but small businesses. So how do we get them contracts? You have like 500K or $1 million or more that are, led by founders of color. So that might be me having a meeting with someone at National Grid or Eversource, thinking about how they're doing, that work, or talking to contractors about, do they need more bunding or insurance, or, front end or back office support. And so looking at that. And then the last C is communities. And communities is really about, I give the example of the Lorax, speaking for the trees. We try to speak for vulnerable communities. And so a lot of the work we're doing there is really more around policy and advocacy. So how do we, make sure voices are heard and amplified? And so we might be working with the Environmental League of Massachusetts. We might be, responding to requests for comment, from Mass CEC or from some, governing board. Or my friend Shalonda Baker, who is a professor at Northeastern, just left to be the deputy director of Energy Justice at the Department of Energy. So when she left the seat open at the Energy Facility Siting Board. So, we nominated or recommended 5 or 6 people that we think would be good to, fill her vacated slot. And so, that's just a sampling of the things, but that's what we're trying to do via Brown and Green Space.
Great, thanks for that overview. I guess moving to Ryan next, I know we've mentioned Greentown Labs a few times in this conversation and just how important they are to this whole system, especially in Massachusetts. So maybe if you just want to go a little bit more in depth on how exactly Greentown supports companies at the early stage and kind of innovation in the clean tech space in general.
Well, I would be glad to. And I describe Greentown Labs as a community, unlike any other in the clean tech ecosystem. And at its heart, it is a community. It's a group of folks, who primarily are at Greentown Labs for incubation. So founders, entrepreneurs who come to Greentown to incubate their early stage startup in clean tech or climate tech. And what Greentown does so well for those entrepreneurs and founders is provide them with all the resources they need to scale their company. The amazing thing about entrepreneurship is that you can have this novel idea, and that novel idea can evolve and mature and grow into a product. But the giant challenge and the big pain is turning that product into a company, and then turning that company into a profitable company. There are so many pieces involved in doing that. And what we try to do is provide all the various resources and help and assistance along the way to make it easier for entrepreneurs to focus on building a product and commercializing their technology. So that incubation is at the heart of what we do. We take a really broad definition of clean tech and climate tech. It's not just about energy. It's about transportation. It's about buildings. It's about water. It's about agriculture. There are so many sectors that we are going to have to fundamentally change in order to reach carbon neutrality that we want to have a broad cross-section of entrepreneurs attacking this problem in so many different ways. And so that's why we take that kind of big tent approach to defining climate tech and clean tech. And so it means we have a lot of different resources. It's a place where you can go have a desk, like a lot of co-working spaces, but there's also a wet laboratory and a prototyping lab where you literally can, get your hands dirty and build your prototype. And all those resources ranging from, some of the soft resources like connections to lawyers and insurance providers to the hard resources like a machine shop, an electronics lab, and a testing chamber. So it's a great place to come if you are a founder and you are looking to scale a clean tech or climate tech company. It is a great place to go join an early stage startup if you are passionate about being in this space and you want to roll your sleeves up and get your hands really dirty building a clean future. So I encourage folks to look at all the companies that are there and think about areas that they are interested in. Beyond the entrepreneurship aspect of it, that definition of community that I started off with really aims to bring together all the various people who are going to help create the climate future that we want. And so that means that we have an accelerator program. And it is an amazing accelerator program where we aim to build really strong partnership between startups that are really close to kind of commercializing their technology and forward-thinking corporate partners. Schneider Electric is one of our partners on that accelerator program. And in fact, if you are interested in energy storage and some great startups in the space, check out Bold Ideas 2020 Final Showcase. It's coming up later this month, and you'll get to see Edison and some of his colleagues from Schneider, 4 great startups, and some other great panelists, kind of pitch their vision of what an energy storage future looks like. So we've got an accelerator program, and then we have this community of investors who are focused on, giving the startups the fuel that they need to grow, stakeholders who are very interested in helping support Greentown Labs, and organizations like Carrie's Brown in the Green Space. We are very mindful of the role we play in the community and how important it is to build the future that works for everybody. So I would be, mindful of 2 things, and I'll say them now, so they don't escape me during our time together. Number one, you may have a mantle here, but this is Women's History Month, and there are amazing women in this community Greentown Labs has this rock star CEO, Emily Reichert, who I hope you get to meet someday. Our CFO, Suzanne Oakley, our Chief of Staff, former co-op, Cayman Somerville, Julie Travellini, our VP of Marketing, Nina Berger, our VP of Partnerships. We have this incredible group of women who lead us. And so I'm proud to hear, they're too busy doing other stuff. That's why you got me, right? So I'm proud to be here representing them. And I know there are, I know Carrie and Edison agree that we have amazing women who are leading in this space. But we need more women founders, and we need more women in leadership positions, as we need more people of color, and we need to diversify our community. I love the fact that I know Carrie and Edison, and I can be on a different call with Carrie tomorrow talking about how we can support efforts and be working with Edison on partnership. But the fact that we know each other is also somewhat of a problem. We need to broaden this tent, and we need to bring more people into it. And so that is one of Greentown's goals, and that fueled our first ever expansion out of state to Houston, Texas. Talk about a place where just a couple of years ago, they thought of themselves as the energy capital of North America, and now, and I sincerely mean this, having spent so much time down there and working with partners, they think of themselves as the energy transition capital of North America. That fundamental shift in just a couple of years is amazing. Amazing. And I think it speaks to the economic opportunity that lies ahead for not just this decade, but the next 3 decades, in my opinion, that is trillions upon trillions of dollars of economic work we all need to do. And so I think for folks who want to come into this space, like yourselves, like all these the great folks at Northeastern, I encourage you to think about this is a career, a climate career, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, be a founder, whether you want to come join a startup at Greentown, whether you want to go work in a forward-thinking organization like Schneider, or focus on the policy side. You could be a climate lawyer or a climate founder or anything in between. And it's really exciting to me to see this community grow. And Greentown, we're a community. It's the heart of what we do. But the only way we're going to grow is with folks like yourself on this call, students who say, I want to have a career in climate, and it matters to me, and I'm gonna take that passion and I'm gonna pair it with a vocation, whether it's in entrepreneurship or law or engineering or policy, and run with it. And you know what, from my perspective, you're going to be if you do, you're going to be running with it for the next 3 decades, because that's how much work we got to do to save this planet.
Great, thanks, Ryan. And I'm sure we all, as confused college students, can appreciate that career advice, especially when we're kind of stuck in the middle of midterms and exams and everything. So it's nice to have that inspiration at the end of the journey. But I guess, Edison, moving to you, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the investor perspective. I know you described how you support companies at Schneider and kind of like what that partnership could look like. But I guess taking a step forward, if you were looking at a company at Greentown or something, what does your investment process look like? What sticks out to you and what excites you in the space?
Yeah, and Ryan mentioned about our Bold Ideas 2020 program, which being very fortunate to work with Greentown to lead that effort. It's actually it's wrapping up next week, so it's amazing to think that we're like 7 days away. But that bringing that up because that brings a little bit of perspective in terms of this investment process per se. Mostly when we are talking about early stage companies. And perhaps one of the key things to consider is, at the end of the day, it's always about people. Who are the people? What motivates them? Are they able to deliver on their promises? Are they able to figure out problems? Are they able to motivate other people and to lead? And that's a huge component that's so fundamental as a building block for any company that you ever going to work for. So you see several times, like you meet a lot of people that they hate their jobs, right? And why is that? It's because wrong culture. It's just not the right fit with the people. Perhaps their identity is so limited that they are inside these little bubbles that they are not able to think, beyond their own limitations and think about the big challenges ahead. So that's what really makes being part of a startup so exciting, because you have this vision of how you want to build the world that you want to live in, right? So that's a key piece of it. And because of that, I think a big portion of this whole investment process, at least from an early stage perspective, comes down to building relationships, to getting to meet people, to kind of see how are they learning, how fast are they learning, how are they addressing challenges, how are they going to basically figure out what's next, and how are they setting goals for themselves and for everybody that's working with them. That all being said, because a program like Bold Ideas 2020, what we did was basically we identify market opportunity, which was energy storage. So we see that energy storage is going to play a key role in the future of what we call the new electric world, right? So we see everything is going electric. And in order to make that happen, there are definitely some roadblocks that need to be overcome. And perhaps one thing that I always like to quote, I saw this on a book from Shaw, that he basically is talking about unlocking access to the larger mainstream financial markets. But on the other hand, he also says, you can't throw money on problems and expect that these problems are going to go away. So it's all about that, the people that will figure out being resourceful to overcome those problems. So that's number one. Number two is really about, are they working on an opportunity that's really going to move the needle? The name of the game in energy is scale, right? So you're talking about, mostly when you talk about decarbonization, right? I think we all have this 10-year target that we want to make sure that we accelerate this transition as fast as we can to be able to reach these goals. And of course, given the pace of technology evolution, I think a lot can happen in 10 years. It's exponential growth that we just cannot imagine how things are going to play out. But the market opportunity goes with the mindset of, are you thinking global? Are you thinking about really building something that in essence is going to transform how we live, work, and play? So that's the other factor. Another key aspect there is, as any entrepreneur, in essence, you gotta bring something to the table. And we call that, how do you create value? Right? And usually that creating value is giving a market opportunity. You're coming up with something that's probably making someone's life better. And it could be solving a pain point, a problem, or basically create a new opportunity that will make people thrive. So identifying exactly how do you create value, which is usually something very much unique and related to your own background and your own expertise. And once you are able to articulate that, hey, here's how we create value, then we need to know how you're going to capture a portion of that value. And that's usually the business model, right? So you're going to deliver a product or a service, and you got to receive something in exchange for that. And the value capture is usually dependent upon how you are going to go to market. how are you going to deliver that value to those customers that need or are compelled to buy whatever it is that you have to offer. So that key value creation framework of how do you create value, how do you capture value, how do you deliver value, executing on your promises, is the other key aspect of this whole proposition. And once we understand that, we understand who's the team, what's the business, what's the market that you operate, and what's the promise of what you're going after. Then it's a matter of making sure that we understand really well what are the resources that you need to be successful. And that's when, as basically, let's put it this way, one of the very last steps in the process, like how much money you're going to need on an investment, because money is a commodity, right? You can get that anywhere, right? And what really makes a difference is how can you basically not only bring money, but basically bring the value add that's going to increase the likelihood of success of that venture as it navigates through very stormy water, deal with competition, deal with all sorts of booby traps along the way, or like unexpected things that really happen, and they will happen. There is another quote that's kind of interesting, like this is a quote from Brad Field. He basically says that the startup life is a roller coaster with no barf bags. So you got to be prepared to deal with it. And the other perhaps fundamental to wrap this up point that it comes down to is an investment is a two-way avenue. It's not just about how do you get the investment. It's also about a long-term relationship. Whoever is going to be your investor is going to be your partner for probably the next 5 to 10 years at least, right? So is there a match on that relationship that you can, in essence, be able to go over such a long-term engagement and not kill each other in the process, right? So that being said, like you see, there are some key areas that we're always looking at, and then of course I think this overall is a very small word, so everybody knows everybody, and people talk about what are the key opportunities that might move the needle, because I think overall we're all rowing in the same direction and we have the same goals. So yeah, like I think being top of mind, being able to market yourself in a way that people know what you're up to, and also know that you are able to get it done, is a big piece of the whole equation. So I guess that's kind of from an investor's perspective, we put programs like Bold Ideas 2020 to have this opportunity to build this relationship, have these interactions with the entrepreneur, evaluate if all these things we can check the boxes there. And again, since we are thinking about a long-term business relationship with the entrepreneurs, which at the end of the day are going to be our partners in the business, it's not something that happens overnight, right? It's really a process that I think you plant seeds and you reap rewards later on.
Great, thanks. And I think it's great to hear kind of the emphasis on the relationship and the human part of the investment too, especially in the cold finance world, coming from a finance student, but that's definitely top of mind there. So I guess I know I want to make sure we have time to open it up to questions from the audience. So maybe I'll just ask one final question to you three and get a few quick thoughts from everyone, and then we can open it up. So I guess just zooming out a bit, and this might be hard to kind of provide a short answer to, but I think the clean tech energy or industry as a whole is poised for rapid change and growth, and already has experienced that, especially with the new administration and kind of increased pressure to reach decarbonization goals over the next 10, 20 years will only continue. So just curious, a few quick thoughts on what do you think should be kind of like the most important consideration over the next 10 years, or what do you want to see happen in the future of the clean tech space? So kind of a loaded question, but anyone can start with that.
I can jump in first. I think mine is easy. Leading Browning to green space, so much is happening, as both Ryan and Edison said. And so I think there's like I made sure I put on a green shirt. It's, St. Patrick's Day, but, I think there's this green wave or green tsunami that's actually already on top of us. And as all of that is happening, I want to make sure that Black and brown people and women aren't left out of it. I think that's my biggest concern. I know it's happening, and I could play outside of that space, but I want to make sure that I see those folk there, because I think it's just better for the industry. It's better for the economy. It's better just all around. McKinsey and BCG, and they're all the reports that say diverse teams are better. And so why wouldn't we want that in the clean energy sector and beyond? So I'm coming from the environmental side. So there is the food, the water, the energy, the environmental, all of those pieces. I just want to make sure that, Black, BIPOC folk and women are a part of this revolution.
Glad to jump in after Carrie and echo absolutely every word he just said. So a couple quick thoughts. Number one, if at the federal level, there is a clean electricity standard that is passed, and whether it's 100% by 2035 or 100% by 2040, who knows what exactly it'll be. But a lot of groups are proposing 100% by 2035, and that's what President Biden said recently. If that happens, that is going to fundamentally change our infrastructure, and will require such an enormous investment in the infrastructure that we have to move energy around, and all of the systems that play a part of that. And so, if you think about both opportunities for investment as well as opportunities for professional growth, when the car surpassed, when the automobile surpassing the horse buggy finally hit that tipping point, about 100 years ago, it still took 30 years to build all the highways and the suburbs and everything else to create that car culture. And so there is going to be a massive, massive infrastructure shift. There's going to be a race to build it. There's going to be a race to own it. And there's going to be a race to see who uses it. And so I think that's where Carrie's organization, all the great work Browning the Green Space comes in. And frankly, that's where organizations like Schneider and folks like Edison are so important, because that transition of infrastructure, is the scale of it is so enormous that it's going to be the incumbents, the big corporate partners who have size and have scale, that are going to play such an important role. And so you want to support, go work for, go invest in the organizations that are forward thinking and that are, looking ahead, and not trying to be the laggards in this, but saying, yep, we're ready to build the EVs. We are ready to power our organization renewably. We're ready to invest in the infrastructure, because that investment is going to be so large. There's an and, not a but. The and is that clean electricity standard is only going to get us a certain way there towards carbon neutrality. You're going to see opportunities that emerge in other sectors that are going to be equally meaningful from both an investment opportunity and a career opportunity. And in fact, because a lot of the work in clean electricity is going to be more infrastructure focused, and probably there's more debt, there's more project finance, the returns would be a little lower, although there's tons of money to be made. There may be actually more ripe investment opportunities in some of these other sectors where you just have there's big targets to hit in terms of greenhouse gas reductions. I think of agriculture and ag tech as being a really kind of meaningful opportunity for investment. Is something that I'm not historically worked in until getting to Greentown and seeing some of the opportunities that were there and seeing some of the transformative things our members were doing. So it's not a this infrastructure but no innovation in other areas. No, it's the infrastructure and all the other innovation we're going to need to get all the way to carbon neutrality. And I think you can think about the infrastructure as being an opportunity to look more to the market leaders and finding the ones that are forward thinking and thinking of returns there that are still meaningful. And then you can look to the innovation side and say, all right, what are the other sectors? Great. Now we got 80% of the way to carbon neutrality. Well, how do we get the other 20%? What are the other pieces of the puzzle we put together? Is it hydrogen? Is it in agriculture? Is it in advanced materials? Is it in carbon capture? Which is, interest is rapidly intensifying in carbon tech. As soon as there's a tax on carbon, if that comes, now you have ability to project, you put a price on carbon, now you can project finance carbon capture, big time. So it's about saying, supporting those companies and the work that's going to be done to get us to that 80%, and then saying, all right, what are the other pieces of the puzzle? How do we put them together? Where do we put our bets to find that other 20% that's going to get us to carbon neutrality? And that's my loaded answer to your very loaded question. And I'm sure Edison will have even more wisdom to dispense upon that. So there you go, Edison.
I don't know if I can add too much. You guys cover some pretty key points in terms of that, and it's really the whole energy problem is very complex. I really don't want to downplay it at all, and it takes everything, right? Like all hands on deck. So it is about diversity, and diversity in all levels, like diversity of thought, diversity of people, diversity of economic impact. It's like everything. It's going to transform everything that we know as a society. So I guess perhaps just taking one step back here is, I think an all-electric future is pretty awesome, and I want to get there as soon as possible, just because of what we're going to get out of it. So we see that technology is accelerating on an ever-increasing pace, right? So every year we can do so much more with so much less, right? And when we start to see, perhaps one thing to consider here is folks have been working on these problems and technologies and issues, policy and social problems, everything, for decades, probably 40 years, maybe even more than that. So I guess don't take for granted that things haven't moved as fast as we all would hope to date. Is that it was just like people have been working a lot and faced with the real challenges, and these are tough nuts to crack. So in terms of what are the most important considerations on over the next 10 years, for me, it really comes down to leadership. It's like having a clear vision. Where is it that we want to go? And stop the whole distraction of, oh, we're going to use blue hats or red hats, and that's what's the most important issue today. It's all about, hey, we know that we need to get to decarbonization, and we know already that the way to get there is through electrification. And we know that that's going to create an awesome new future for everybody. So now that we do it, let's all roll in the same direction. And I would go with that. You either lead, follow, or get out the way, because it's going to happen. So then it goes back to the whole thing of people, like, and I think for all of you that you are getting out of, school and looking to where am I going to be able to go next and the impact that I can have. I think, you can totally do not be afraid of the challenge ahead, just to make sure that you can be in whatever position or role that you can realize your potential and just help transform the society, because we feel like the momentum that's building, as Ryan mentioned, in terms of policy and coordination, international coordination, right, from Paris Agreement that we are back finally, to other things that really show that science is pretty solid on the conclusions. So it's not about let's debate like whether or not Earth is flat, and really let's accept the reality of the world that we live in, and just go through full throttle in executing all the key things that at this point in time, I think one of the key challenges that we have is just adoption of these innovations in clean energy. And if these innovations they are adopted, I think we are all going to be on the right track.
Great. Thank you for those answers and insights. So I know we're almost up on time, and I do want to be respectful of your time, considering I'm sure everyone's been online all day. So I don't know, does anyone have any final burning questions that they want to ask our speakers? Ben?
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm a second-year finance major, and I'm the current senior analyst on NU Impact's Energy and Environment vertical. First of all, I just want to say thanks for your time. You guys had some great insights, and I'm definitely feeling, pretty inspired. One thing I was wondering about is sort of like distributed energy resources and microgrids. So during this semester, like during our sourcing process, we've seen a lot of companies that are sort of focusing on these like more community-based solutions. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on like the trajectory of those kind of solutions, and sort of what are like some of the biggest barriers for companies working in that space to like get the capital that they actually need to make a genuine impact?
Well, perhaps I can take a quick stab on that one. Yeah, that's. I think it's very well understood that the future is distributed, and microgrids are a big piece of it, right? And of course, Schneider is a big leader in the microgrid space. And in terms of the roadblocks to get there, I think a lot of that has been, to that point, like. We already have the technology. It really comes down to how do you create a compelling value proposition that enable customers to adopt it, right? So whenever you're talking about microgrids, which are in essence a very expensive capital outlay, creating innovation business models, like the whole thing about energy as a service. I don't think there is any challenge today having access to capital. You can get as much capital as you want. At the end of the day, everybody's going to ask, like, are you going to be able to close the deal? And are you going to be able to deliver on that contract? But yeah, like we at Schneider, we started like 2 initiatives. One is called Alpha Structure, another one is called Green Structure, which are in essence mechanisms to deliver energy as a service model that helps customers not have to pay the upfront costs of this new infrastructure and just leverage the benefits that it's going to bring to them. So I guess, yeah, that's my take on it.
I'll add one thing real quick, and just to build on something Edison said, a lot of the technology for microgrids has been de-risked. right? So you got to think about it as different types of capital that you would need, all right? You can have scenarios where there are technology companies, and I think of one at Greentown, Hala Technologies, where they're working on platforms to kind of make microgrids more efficient, more distributed energy resources more efficient. Like another company Edison's familiar with, Packetized Energy, is doing similar things, you know, kind of on grid edge. You know, those companies are you know, still in need of venture capital. You know, they're going to need to develop their products. So they need higher risk capital, continue to innovate their products, and you know, make microgrids more manageable, more efficient. That said, a lot of what you need to have a microgrid, both, you know, the renewable power plus the storage systems, a lot of that technology has been de-risked. You know, these are more and more becoming commodities. So you got to take your venture capital hat off, then you got to put your project finance hat on. They need different types of capital. You need to find ways to create recurring revenue streams from generating, storing, selling the energy, whether it's through a PPA, power purchase agreement, or some other model, so that you can finance these microgrids with a lower cost of equity, lower cost of capital. You know, you're not looking for those, you know, moonshot returns. You're looking for, you know, anywhere from 10 to 15% equity on a more de-risked, you know, product like a microgrid. And then to a certain extent where, you know, your cost of debt is cheaper than your return, you have leverage. Right. And so now you can actually increase your equity returns by putting debt on that product as well, all of which is supported by recurring revenue from selling power. And so, you know, here very quickly, excellent question, by the way, you know, we're having a very, you know, kind of small conversation that now extrapolated over billions and trillions of dollars. Right. And to Edison's point earlier about, you know, the scale and the enormity and all this desire to get to full electrification. And think about all the types of capital that you're going to need and all the various sources and all the various places around the country. And now, most importantly, I mean, hey, return on capital is very important. But most importantly, the thing you got to take away is put an equity lens on that. We got one planet, right? And make sure that we are thinking about, because we have a chance to design these systems to benefit everybody, and put an equity lens on that and make sure and think about how we are not just using the technology, but how we are using the capital to design systems that work for everybody. We screwed it up. We're still trying to help you guys fix it, but that's your future, right? That's your job. That's what we're expecting you to do, is to, you know, we're going to help, but, you know, we know you guys are smarter, so we're looking for you guys to fix it.
Yeah, and I know we're sort of past time, but the last thing I'll just add to that with the equity lens is, you know, there is a lot of capital out there, but, you know, the same way you're talking about distributed electricity, like how is that capital distributed? And I think from an equity standpoint, if you look at the VC world, you know, the numbers are like what, 3-4% of women, you know, get VC money. Like 1% of African Americans, or if you happen to be an African American woman, is like 0.002. So this is not an exact sort of apples to apples comparison, but similar in project finance or other things. Like, how is that money getting to developers of color or underserved or vulnerable communities? And you know, what we've seen is, unfortunately, a lot of this energy technology, it ends up, you know, being for the rich, white, you know, green and vain. And that's really what we're trying to work at Brown in the Green Space, is how do we get this technology to the people who need it the most? I'll leave it at that, because I know we'll be here all night. You know, Ryan and Edison and I can talk all night.
I think this group could too. I apologize for not leaving more time for questions from the group, but I appreciate staying over the extra time. Jordan, do you have any final wrap-ups or comments you want to make?
Wow, it got dark in my room. All I want to say is that we have those events coming up that we spoke about before. And if you guys are interested, this is the QR code to our link tree if you want some more information. And thank you for all our panelists for coming out tonight. It was an awesome panel, and thanks Izzy for moderating.
Thank you all.
Well, have a good
pleasure.
rest.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.